Welcome to Scented Pages. Hello. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. Today's scent is Guess by Marciano. And let me get the notes real quick from Fragrantica. That way we can set up our little fireplace and get the video going. So the main accords of this scent, and it smells so good. Citrus, vanilla, fruity, tropical, warm, spicy, powdery, white floral, musky, sweet, aromatic. And then it was released in 2007 by Guess. It has top notes are curacao, carambola, which is starfruit, cardamom, and grapefruit. Middle notes are honeysuckle, jasmine, and peony. Base notes are vanilla, musk, and woody. Beautiful. It's a beautiful scent. So let's get the fireplace going. So we can talk about these two books that I read this week. Two thrillers about strangers. So here we go. Two thrillers about strangers. So the first one, that little wine. I said to myself, well, let me get a little glass of wine together. And earlier my mom took me to the store, to this cheaper little store, and they had all the goodies in there. So I got myself a bottle of wine and her a bottle of wine. So I said, well, I'll drink me a glass of wine and talk about the two books that I read this week. They were so good. The first one was by John Mars. And I love every book by him. So far, I have not been disappointed by him at all. And it was called The Stranger in Her House. No, it was called, yes, The Stranger in Her House. And it was about this lady named Connie and her mother named Gwen. And her mother is like 80 years old and she has dementia. So Paul is a volunteer who was sent by a charity, right? That would have been my first red flag, because I think I'm not even sure if they named the charity in the book. Maybe I've just forgotten it. I think it was called maybe Helping Hands or something like that, some kind of charity. But the girl Connie never did, like, initially, upon her initial meeting this man Paul, didn't immediately go and find out who he is. She didn't dig around and do any research on his organization. She didn't call the organization to find out who he is, if he was legit or anything like that. She just kind of accepted that he was there. And when she met him, I think he was cleaning out her mother's gutters. So at first she was kind of taken with him because he was a handsome guy or whatever, but she immediately kind of got over that because he got annoying. Like, he was doing too much when it came down to her mother. And she already had her mother on, like, a schedule. She liked being the person that her mother depended on. And her mother was beginning to depend on Paul too much. And beginning to, like, confuse him and think that he was her her late husband who had died. So, he begins to seduce Chloe's mother. Oh my goodness, this was good. So he begins to, like, befriend her and, like, slowly inch Chloe out of Gwen's life, doing stuff. Like, first he took Gwen out of town for a couple of days on, like, a weekend trip without clearing it first with Chloe about that girl's demented mother. How you just gonna take it upon yourself to take her away for a whole week? And Chloe was done. She was getting ready to send out, like, have the police be looking for her mother and everything. And then her mother and Paul just popped back up in the house and was like, oh, hey, we was just away for the weekend on a getaway. And Chloe was like, excuse me. So then he changed the locks. Oh, he put this like film on the window so Chloe or anybody couldn't see in, but he could see out. And then, honey, the last thing was he began to like really like seduce her and began to have sex with that old lady. He wound up moving in. Somehow or another, the events turned around where he was able to justify moving in. And of course, the mother, Gwen, isn't going to object to it. She's thinking, nobody really know what she's thinking because, she's sick. So she's pretty much going along with what I guess feels good to her in her mind because she's thinking that Paul is her late husband, Bill. So goes on, he ends up moving in. And there isn't really anything that Chloe can do about it. She's been talking to people, talking to social workers and stuff, and they've been like, well, I mean, I don't understand. This was the part that I didn't understand. Because how are you going to tell somebody that there's nothing that you can do about their 80-year-old demented mother and this guy hooking up, this random guy, and it's just weird. Like, and the cops, nobody would do anything. So Chloe ends up having to, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Chloe ends up having to go out of town for work or whatever, for her job. She has to like go out of the country to like Italy, right? And she's out of the country for like 2 months. And when she comes back, she finds out that her mother is dead. And not only that, but since she had been gone, Paul had married her mother and put the house up for sale. So she couldn't inherit none of the house that her mother had left to her. She couldn't inherit none of the money. It was terrible. And so then when she found out that her mother was dead, she was absolutely convinced that it was Paul. Like, couldn't nobody tell her anything else. Like, the neighbors around the way was trying to tell her, no, he's a nice guy. And she was not trying to hear it. She was like, no, I know that he's the one who killed my mother, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And honey, S hits the fan. Because it gets real after that, and the book was so good. It was so good. I don't want to give too much of it away. I never want to give too much of it away. But I just want to encourage you to go out and read it, to pick it up, get it. It's definitely a 5 out of 5. It was good. It was so good. Then the second book I read was, I didn't even light up my little lamp. I just kind of wanted to do a little reading update. So the second one I read about strangers was by Mary Monroe, called Never Trust a Stranger. Oh my goodness. Now, a little bit of backstory about Mary Monroe and her books for me. I started reading her books years ago. She has another series called the God Don't Like Ugly series that I had started reading. And recently I said, you know what, I'm gonna revisit that series and reread that God Don't Like Ugly series, because she has since released, or I think I said it in another video, she's since released a lot more books in that series. I was like, I need to catch up on that. But so I downloaded that again, and then I also downloaded another series that she has. Well, at the time that I was downloading it, I didn't know it was a series. I just thought it was a standalone book, and it was this, right? But this is book 2 in her other series called Dangerous Love, or Dangerous Love, something like that. It's another series. I have to look it up. But this is book 2 in it, and it was so good. So I'm going to, I'm going to make a video for the whole 3-book series. I'm going to read the first one because I didn't know that this was, book 2 in the series. So before I have the last one already downloaded on my Kindle. But before I read that, I want to read the first one. And then there's also a prequel, like little booklet that is a prequel to the characters in this series, in this book, Lola and Joan. So this book is about Lola and Joan, and they scandalous, honey. They so crazy. They are two best friends who, where's my honey ashtray? They are two best friends who belong to an online sex club. I sure know how to pick them, don't I? But yes, honey, they belong to an online sex club. And they like to just, and it's not prostitution because they're not doing it in exchange for money. They're just doing it in exchange for the experience, I guess. Because, I mean, I want to say because they're bored, but the deeper reason is the girl, Joan, she's married to a guy named Reed. And he is just the worst. I mean, he's super controlling. He's real demeaning because he's like one of those like hoity-toity uppity type Negroes that, you know, he's a dentist. So, and Joan is a little more hood. Like, she's a little more down to earth. And she likes to do normal things and hang around normal people. And he be hating on her. And he doesn't want her to do that. And she just doesn't like him. She doesn't like him at all. And so that's the reason why she's on that online group. And then her best friend is, that's the reason why she's on the online group. She justifies all of her ratchet, terrible behavior because she don't like her husband. Oh, and she's afraid to leave him because he always threatens to leave her with, if you leave me, I'll just kill myself. I guess I can't say that on YouTube. I will unalive myself. He threatens her with that. So she don't want to leave him. She wants to leave, but she don't want to leave him because of that. Then her best friend Lola, goodness, she's a sweet girl. She's single, but she's also on this website, and she meets this guy named Calvin. And she is oh so head over heels in love with Calvin. I mean, you would think that Calvin was just the best thing since sliced bread, honey. Whole time. Calvin is the biggest piece of shit there is because he wants to just murder Lola. He can't stand her. He hates her guts. And she is completely and utterly just taken by him. And he's only dating her for as long to plot her murder. Terrible. So, we have chapters of his thought process and how he's going about his plan and journey in killing Lola, and Lola's just like, oh, I'm so in love, and she don't know the half of what he's really got in store for her. He's a monster. His chapters are always kind of difficult to get through because he just really wants to kill this girl. I really hope that he doesn't. I can't wait for the last book to find out what in the world he does with her because she's being the worst. She's just being too gullible, too silly, and I'm rooting for her because I just want her to realize who he really is. So I cannot wait to get to be able to complete the whole series, to get to that last book. Before I get to that last book, though, I'm going to do my first one so I can, really get the whole experience of the series. But this book was so good. Mary Monroe never disappoints. She always does such a good job. And what I like about her books is that they're juicy and good without a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of extra stuff. Like, doesn't have a whole lot of lewd sex scenes. I don't care if it does, but for her books to not have a whole lot of bad language and lewd sex and whatnot, they're always just as good and just as juicy and page turners. So I'm looking forward to getting through that series. This was a good book. This was a good reading week. I had fun this week. Also, I want to talk about this book. I have never read a Beverly Jenkins book before, but this is the physical book that I'm reading. right now. It's called Forbidden, and it's about this guy who is actually mixed. His mother is black, his father is white. He's passing, but he falls in love with this girl named Edie, and she's black. And of course, you know, if he's with her, he can't continue to pass as white anymore, and blah 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 blah, and all of that. So, but it's been good. I started it yesterday, and I got through about 450 or so pages of it. So I'll keep on reading this and give you an update. I've never read her before, so I'm looking forward to getting into her too. So I'm gonna wrap up this video now. I always do more talking than the smoking. But okay. You guys have a good rest of your weekend. See you next time.